Hello, and welcome to the Week 12 edition of the Survivor Podcast here on thelines.com. Matt Brown, Steven Anders. It is a road show for me, but hopefully the information is still good. And Steven, we're sitting here. If you made it through last week, it's, again, good on you. You had the Jags left, and you ended up playing the Jags. And here's the thing. Unlike the week before, where we said, hey, the Cowboys are a layup, take the layup. There is too much uncertainty around a Bengals team that you knew was going to be down players on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, and the Bills team that was obviously on the decline with injuries all over the secondary and injuries all over very key, important parts of the team. Last week, I'd have gotten bumped too if I had the Commanders. Unlike the week before where we said, hey, if you got bumped, you probably did it wrong. I don't think you did it wrong this time. It's just the NFL is wacky, and it's too hard to overcome 6 turnovers.
I will push back just slightly on that. For the most part, I agree with you. We always talk about game theory and trying to avoid the most popular pick. And last week we thought, even though the spread was telling us they're a huge favorite, we thought that a team of that quality should never be that big of a favorite. Obviously, it was still hard to envision Tommy DeVito doing what he did and the Commanders having 6 turnovers, but if we're practicing game theory in Survivor, it looked like the Commanders were the most popular team with a lot of options. It was one reason to stay off of them. So just another nugget for people to have in the back of their head as we move forward here.
Yeah, certainly. You've gotten to this point, you're looking to win. And I think, optimal strategy last week was probably to play either the Commanders or the Jags. One ended up losing, one ended up winning. And here we are where whatever pool you were in at this point has been decimated. So if you've made it to here, you need to really start looking at the long game, and you need to start thinking about winning this thing, because you are one of the very, very few that is going to be left as we head here into week number 12. Now, if you're watching this and you're in the Circa contest, there is a mini week this week in which you will have to get a pick in. And, it's of the 3 Thursday games and the 1 Black Friday game. So you do at least have 4 to choose from when you go in with all of that. And Steven, if you're not in the Circa contest, then you're just, you're playing this week straight up, but there are a couple options on Thursday and Friday that if you're going to have to make a decision here in the next 24 hours, if that's what you're going to do with all of that, because we're looking at a Detroit team that's a big favorite. We're looking at a Dallas team that's a big favorite, and we're looking at a 49ers team that's a big favorite. And then we're looking at a Dolphins team that's a big favorite. So really 4 options as we head into the short week here.
I agree. I think we should start with the Thursday games because of the dual purpose if people are in Circa, and also because of the big favorites there, and we can kind of work our way to the Sunday options here. But because I think there is one I'd be very comfortable with if I still have them, another I'd be comfortable and a little less comfortable than that top team, and then one that's still more than a touchdown favorite in the Detroit Lions that kind of giving me a little pause here, Matt. I'm not sure about you, what you think of the Lions right now.
Yeah, so they are 7.5 point favorites. The Cowboys 12.5 point favorites. The Niners are 7 point favorites. Of note, that game is on the road. Dolphins are 10 point favorites. That game also on the road. But if you haven't been paying attention, they did go ahead and bench Zach Wilson. So it will be Tim Boyle going for the Jets in that one. So, Steven, it's interesting because people, specifically if they were in the big Circa contest, probably set out thinking no matter what, they were going to save the Dallas Cowboys and play the Dallas Cowboys this week. Then over the course of the season, what we saw was a Packers team that wasn't as good as we thought. So now we have a Lions team that's a big favorite. We have a Seattle Seahawks team that has really been sputtering here over the last few weeks. And so now we have a 49ers team that is a big favorite. And then we thought it was going to be Aaron Rodgers, on Black Friday. That's not the case. And so now we have the Dolphins, who are a double-digit favorite as well. Listen, I don't know what you think of the difference between Tim Boyle and Zach Wilson. I know there was a massive line move from 7.5 all the way to 10. How much worse can Tim Boyle be than the worst quarterback in the NFL is the question that I have to ask here. I'm not saying the line movement isn't warranted because at least one guy has experience and the other guy doesn't. But, I felt confident using the Dolphins when it was going to be Zach Wilson. I feel even more confident using the Dolphins when it's Tim Boyle.
Yeah, in the context of Survivor, where you're just trying to win the game, not worry about the spread, I
Mhm.
think the Dolphins are a very safe choice this week. I have come to learn that whatever my opinion is of the drop off of a quarterback, I tend to care a little bit more about what the market's telling me because they have more money than me and they're the ones that are moving the lines.
Yeah.
And their opinion has been abundantly clear that somehow Tim Boyle is worse and apparently considerably worse than Zach Wilson. I went and dug into the numbers and he had laughable college stats as a quarterback.
Yeah.
He wound up buddying up with Aaron Rodgers. And if you look at the sample of what he's had an interception rate of more than 7%. For context, the year Jameis Winston had 30 interceptions, he had a 4.8 interception
Mhm.
percentage. So he's
Yeah.
been really friggin' bad. So I'm always hesitant to say, well, it can't be any worse. Well, it could be as worse. And I
Right.
don't think the Jets are live to win this game at all, even though they have, what's probably one of the two best defenses in the NFL at this point. Now, the
And that's
question
the
becomes,
thing, right?
Matt.
It's yeah, that's the thing in this, right?
Yeah,
It's kind of like, you and I do power ratings every single week, and the Jets were always kind of lingering for me in the like upper to mid 20s because of that defense. But now at this point, I don't care because it doesn't matter how good the defense is if they cannot score any points in a game. You know what I'm saying? Like I
right.
have to quit hanging on to this narrative of like, oh, but the defense, it doesn't matter because the defense literally is going to have to hold teams to 10 points in order for them to win games. And that's just too much to ask of any NFL defense right now. So they plummeted in my power ratings this week. I think I held on too long on this whole notion of like, oh, well, they've got a good defense. They do, but it doesn't matter. If you cannot score 17 points in a game, you're just going to continue to lose football games. And that's exactly where this Jets team is.
Right. And there's always the possibility that if Boyle is as bad as the market thinks, that Trevor Siemian comes in at some point in this game. And I do think that's, gives them at least,
Mhm.
I don't know, a couple percentage points more chance to win the game if the defense balls out against Miami. I don't know, man. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that I don't think that's enough to stop me from using Miami in this one. Even though I don't think this is a game where Miami gets the 30 points like they've done against some of the other bad teams, just because I respect the Jets defense. So we'll get into some other teams here, though, because
Mhm.
if you're like me, I've already used the Dolphins at this point. So even though they would be at the top of my list in general, I think there's a decent amount of people that may have already used the Dolphins as well.
Yeah. So for me, it kind of goes down to this as well, right? Where if you've made it this deep and you have the Cowboys left, it's to me like I would just not be getting cute at this point because again, like you're you're in the position to win this thing. Like you are in a position to win your survivor pool. And the Commanders, guys, listen, could this game be closer than 12 and a half? That's irrelevant, right? Like we're not talking spreads here. We just need a win. And this Commanders team on the road against Dallas, against a defense that is going to get some sacks on Sam Howell, who's going to force a turnover or two from Sam Howell. Steven, I don't know how you look at this from the Cowboys' perspective. I've got them kind of like knocking on the door of that elite tier, not quite there yet in the NFL. Certainly the Commanders don't fit the bill for me there. So if I had the Cowboys available to me this week, I would go ahead and play them and let everyone else try and get cute with like the Lions or the Niners on the road, which don't get me wrong, I think the Lions still, I mean, I think the Niners still win even though they're on the road. But hey, look, road games, weird. It's Seattle, Seattle gets loud and things and whatever. We've seen weird things happen. So I would let everyone else get cute this week, whereas I'm just going to take the Cowboys at home against a team that is very unlikely to win the game outright.
Yeah, I agree. Pressure is what hurts Sam Howell in these games, and the Cowboys can get a lot of pressure in this one, even though they, again, this is just a matter of whether they win the game. And the Cowboys are just monsters offensively when they're at home. They're bullies. And they're doing what we want them to do, as opposed to what we saw a lot of the Ezekiel Elliott era, where they're running it too much and
Mm-hmm.
being less than ideal efficiency with how much they were running the ball in early downs. Their pass rate is among the highest and above expectation in the league. So they're being smarter offensively. We like the way they're calling plays, and Dak is balling out against these bad
Yeah.
defenses. So and Washington has one of the two worst pass defenses in the NFL if you look at it at advanced metrics. So again, at the end of this video, we're going to give our top three. I'm going to give my top three in general, but also my personal top three because I also acknowledge that a lot of our viewers and listeners probably used the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago when they played Tommy DeVito.
that was our recommendation anyway, right? I mean, like, and so hopefully you don't have them left, but if you do, then that's an option. What do we think about San Francisco on the road here against Seattle? I think when I look at this, you and I talk about this on our private Slack, but when healthy, and they need all the pieces, because we've seen whenever one piece goes out for whatever reason, things get clunky. But right now they have all the pieces. When all the pieces are there, the 49ers are a top 3 team in the NFL. They are in that elite category. And going on the road, I get it. You don't love taking a road team, but this is just right up the road. I mean, like, again, it's not a big trip for them. It's literally San Francisco to Seattle's nothing. And we're also seeing a truck of a 49ers team yet again coming out of the bye last week.
I don't hate it, especially because it looks like the popularity is going to be pretty low compared to some other teams that I would not choose in a million years this week, believe it or not. We have a couple teams that fit that Washington mold of last week. We'll get to them in a little bit. Yeah. I don't mind the Niners. The only reason I'm not going to include them in my top 3 is because I still see some future value with them.
Yep.
I'd be just fine using them in a pinch in the rematch against Seattle when it's at home and not on a short week in week 14. Still have a game against Arizona week 15. Still have a game against Washington in week 17. So I've had them in pocket for a while here in my rebuy survivor. Again, I think some people may not have the Niners anymore from the first Arizona game earlier in the year. But if you still have them, they're a decent option. Dare I say contrarian play with how unpopular it seems they're going to be this week. But in my mind, have a bigger chance to win the game than some of these other teams that look like they're going to be more popular.
Everybody knows that one of the strategies in Survivor is going in and picking on the bad teams. And if we look, I think it's universal at this point, the 2 worst teams in the NFL. We already talked about the Jets. They could be the 3rd worst team, but are the Panthers and are the Giants. We have the Tennessee Titans at home against the Panthers this week. They are 3.5 to 4 point favorites. And then we have the Patriots on the road against the Giants as 3.5 point favorites. Steven, I have no interest whatsoever in the Patriots. I guess if you are a person that has multiple entries left, you could maybe try and pull off a win here with the Titans against the Panthers, but you're still backing a rookie quarterback who's just got a handful of starts in the NFL, and a Tennessee Titans team that really, really has looked like one of the, and our power ratings suggest as much, like really has looked like one of the bottom 6 or 7 teams in the NFL as well. So yeah, you're getting one of the worst teams, if not the worst team, but you're battling them with another bad team.
All right, I'm going to say the same thing about the Titans this week that I said about Washington last week. It looks like the Titans are going to be one of the 2 most popular teams this week. If across all the different pools, if you go by what Pool Genius is telling us in our Survivor column on thelines.com, and again, get a free 3-day trial down in the description. Awesome tools like helping you map out the rest of your season when all of us who are still in this have so much money on the line. So if Tennessee is going to be one of the 2 popular teams this week, automatic game theory reason for me not to use them. And last week I said, hypothetically, if there's ever a defense that Tommy DeVito was going to move the ball against, it would be Washington's secondary. Well, hypothetically, if there's ever a defense that Bryce Young's going to be able to move the ball against, it's Tennessee's pass funnel secondary. So I don't see it happening. I'm not going to the window and betting Panthers money line in this game, but I'm tempted to take the points over a field goal. I'm not going to lie. We'll see if I actually do it on the Megapod, but there's enough concern for me here with a young quarterback who has been erratic and a bad passing defense that, triple 3 reasons why I don't want to use them. Those 2 in the game theory reason. So no Tennessee for me this week.
Yeah. I look at it this way. I mean, the game's got a 36.5 total, Steven, which means there's not going to be a lot of variance. There's not going to be, Panthers could get to 13, which is not a good offensive day at all, and they could get to 13 and still win this game. And like, so when there's a real scenario of that happening for me, that would just not be something, again, that I've made it this far, right? I mean, you've made it this far. This is not like you're trying to do this in week 2 or week 3 to where you're just getting the Titans out of the way. You're never going to use them again. Like, you've made it this far. I don't think you want to go to bat with Will Levis. I think you would feel pretty bad.
Yeah, he's had a high number of turnover worthy plays, and the Panthers may be getting a couple of their two best defensive players back in this game, including in the secondary with JC Horn. So, yeah, I think a lot of variance here, Matt.
Couple of the other options that are out there, the Chiefs are 8.5-point favorites over the Raiders. I would just say this, Steven, again, like the Chiefs just have so much future value. And given that there's these other favorites that we've talked about, it's fine. If you want to play them, I'm never going to talk you off of it, but it's just, you can roll the Chiefs out every single week and feel pretty good about it. And so to me, no interest in the Chiefs. It is a road game. I'm not threatened by the Raiders, but I think there's better use of the Chiefs further on in the season than there is trying to take them this week against the Raiders on the road.
Yeah, looking at their schedule, on the road against Green Bay next week, home against Buffalo, probably not using them there. At New England is the one you can kind of circle in week 15. That
you don't hate.
gives,
I mean, you wouldn't hate the Green Bay one. I know you don't want the road game, whatever. Like, you don't hate that one either. It's a cold weather team. Even if it's cold in Green Bay, it's not going to matter to them. Like, whatever. So it's you could almost roll Kansas City out any week and feel okay with it at least.
Yeah, what I'm trying to figure out is if I want to burn either the Chiefs or the 49ers here if I have them left. Because you're going to probably use one of them in week 15. Chiefs have New England in week 15. Niners have the Cardinals in week 15.
Yep.
So you can save the Niners if you don't use them there for later in week 17 against Washington, depending on how many people are left in your pool. And then rest of the season for the Chiefs, you still have a home game against the Raiders after that in week 16. So, and also the Bengals without Joe Burrow in week 17. So, I could justify using them before week 15, given that you have two bullets left in the gun and two options, really good options between them. So that's kind of what I'm trying to debate here. Whether I use the Chiefs sometime in the next couple of weeks here, knowing I still can have the 49ers in week 15.
Because kind of like what we said, guys, like we're trying to eye the finish line now, right? So you look, and just to kind of give you a heads up, like you're using the Eagles in week 16 against the Giants. So like this is the reason you've held on to the Eagles, right? You're using the Eagles in week 16. So now you've got that like taken care of. So now you're looking around. It's going to be, if you don't use the Chiefs this week, like Steven said, you're going to get the Bengals in week 17 with the Chiefs without Joe Burrow, and it's going to be Brown again. So you can start to kind of plan out how you're going to cash that big ticket at the end of the season, right? So just look, yes, we want to get past this week, but also be thinking about, okay, once I make it past this week, who am I using? How's this going to play out? How am I getting to week 17 and week 18 to where I can actually, win this thing? And Steven, I think if you start to look, these teams that we've told people to kind of hold on to, if they did go that strategy, you can kind of see the rest of the season playing out right now. And you can kind of see your path to getting to week 18.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not just saying this because they're one of our partners. This optimal path tool that Pool Genius has is phenomenal because it gives you all the different variations and you can kind of choose which one you want to go with. If you don't like their top choice, they'll give you secondary options the rest of the way. It really just helps kind of like organize your brain instead of going from each team schedule tab in your browser and trying and figure it out manually. So, there's a couple of teams here this week that they certainly have top two in considering future value the rest of the way. And two of these teams are going to be in my top three. And I'll just ask you at the end here, which one is the most viable here, because the Lions, Matt, are what seems to be a pretty decent recommendation here. Low popularity for me, not a ton of future value because their defense is so concerning that I'm not going to feel all that comfortable playing the Lions, believe it or not, even though the next few weeks are the Bears, the Broncos, the Saints on the road, a couple of games against Minnesota, and never using them against Dallas. But that defense is such a concern for me right now with Detroit that if I'm going to use them, I probably got to use them this week because I'm not sure I'm going to be as comfortable using them the rest of the way.
Yeah, there's a couple of 3.5-point favorites out there that I know are getting a little bit of buzz. Ravens and Chargers, guys. It's Ravens on the road, first game without Mark Andrews. Let's not do that. Let's not go there. And then the Vikings against the Bears. guys, I get it. It's a feel good story with Dobbs, and trust me, me and Steven have been making some money betting the Vikings and betting Dobbs. But look, the Bears squad here is at least a little bit dangerous. Justin Fields showed some life. Like this defense is showing a
They
little
should
bit
have
of
beat
life.
the Lions last
Yeah,
week.
yeah. This defense is showing a little bit of life. I just there are much better options in my personal opinion this week. Even if you're trying to go contrarian, even if you're trying to go off the beaten path, I think there are better options than playing the Vikings against the Bears. Who I got to be honest, like Steven, if we're talking about this a week from now, and the Bears beat the Vikings, neither you or I is not going. We're not going to be surprised. Like that's not going to shock us in the least bit.
Right. I agree. And if this grid that Pool Genius gave us in the Survivor column on the site is correct, they're projecting the Vikings to be the most popular team this week in Survivor.
I can't imagine that. That must
Yeah, I don't.
the early that's early polling, and we're gonna like the mail-in votes are gonna change that. There's no way. There's just no way.
Yeah, I
There's
wasn't
just
sure
no way.
about that either.
Yeah.
We'll see. But if they're going to be double digits, then whatever. Forget game theory. Just don't use them this week. They're not. There's
Yeah.
plenty of other decent options here.
All right, so fire off your top three here. Let's do
All
it.
right, so just generally speaking, this is for everybody, and without knowing what people have available, my top three would be the Dallas Cowboys, followed by the Miami Dolphins, and then followed by probably Detroit, and save San Francisco for one of these easy games they have later on. Now I don't have the Cowboys and the Dolphins available to me. So it looks like my decision is going to come down to either the Lions on Thanksgiving or the Chiefs against Las Vegas.
Yep.
So I think I'm really concerned about this Detroit defense. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm really concerned. And so I got to make up my mind between the two. I'm open to having advice from you, but I don't know I'm not going to have a number three personally. But those are going to be one of my two picks. It's either going to be the Chiefs or the Lions this week, and I'm a little concerned about the Lions and their defense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So my top three, just overall, like taking into account, future value, all the stuff like that. Like I think Dallas is number one with a bullet this week for me. Detroit number two, and then I would in fact go ahead and put the Chiefs as number three for me this week. And the reason being, because if you look at the Dolphins and you look at the Dolphins' future schedule here, yeah, it's the Jets this week, but it's Washington the week after that. It's Tennessee the week after that. It's the Jets the week after that again. So like you could, in theory, use the Dolphins any of the next 4 weeks and feel pretty good about it. And so for me, I'm going to hold off, right? I mean, it's like I'd like having that option and having the flexibility of a team that I know for the next month I can use if need be, right? If things go off the rails, I have a team that I can use any point over the next 4 weeks and feel pretty good about it. So those are my top three overall. And if I were in your situation, I think I would go ahead and use the Chiefs this week. It's just, listen, there's a handful of people left in these pools, right? And like, you're not going to feel incredibly comfortable about using them again, like you said, until 15 or 16 when it's Vegas in 16 or New England in 15, but it is a cross country trip to New England and all that stuff. So I mean, I think that the Patriots are terrible, like god awful, but still there's all that comes into play here. So we're trying to survive in advance here, and you do have other options here moving forward. That said, Detroit, pretty much no future value at all for Detroit. So if you're going to fire Detroit, guys, this is the week to do it, because you don't want to do it on the road at the Saints, at the Bears. Denver's starting to come around and play a little bit better. Then it's on the road at Minnesota, on the road at Dallas. Like it's this week or never with the Lions. So of the teams that you are going to have to play, you have to play 18 teams, and if you're in Circa, you got to play 20. This is it. This is the time to play them, or you're just not going to use them at all.
Yeah, I think what's come down to for me is if I'm not going to use the Lions this week and go Chiefs, then I need to look at the Week 14 schedule and figure out who I'm going to use. That's basically what it's come down to for me. So, and if that's the case, it's probably Niners at home against Seattle. But that's what the advice I would give to people. If you're not going to use the Lions this week, then make sure you have a plan for Week 14.
Yep. Week 14 would be something you could look at. There's, San Francisco has Seattle. They'll at least be big favorites in that game. Baltimore will have the Rams as well in week 14. So a couple of different options out there for you. But guys, it is we say it every week, but congratulations for making it this far. It's been absolutely a bonkers season. Everything that seems like was a slam dunk has not been. And so for you to make it this far is absolutely amazing. And my only thing is yes, there's game theory involved at this point, but getting too cute isn't necessarily always the most EV way to go about all this. So sometimes the obvious things are obvious for a reason, Stephen.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Mo, our coworker Mo Nawara said it best. How did the people feel that took Sam Howell last week and lost, trying to get cute? So
exactly.
Play the teams you know are good.
I agree. Fellas, everything we do, absolutely free. So we do appreciate you guys coming around each and every week. You can hit that subscribe button here on the YouTube channel. We are getting big. I don't know if you see that or not, but this channel is getting big. And so a lot of people are figuring out that we're putting out some pretty good stuff here. And again, everything is absolutely free. If you head to thelines.com, upper right-hand corner, there's going to be a little Discord button. That also absolutely free. And that is everybody in the community chatting every single sport year-round, all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. So be sure and do that, guys. For Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck on your Week 12 Survivor place.